needs to be replaced, but
Recording is on.
Welcome to DXgov governance discussion for Wednesday, March 30th. Starting first with the proposal roundup. Let me share my screen while we wait with bated breath for the status of John's muffler. We can go over the current proposals. Oh, this is actually on the wrong network. So actually no proposals, mainnet proposals on mainnet now, but there was just a swapper.eth proposal that was actually in between the last governance discussion and this one. I think it was submitted on like Friday, and then kind of passed on Sunday, because those only take 4 days to go from submission boost to passing. So that's a cool one. It added the cow token to the token list. That was a big update there, and just like a small thing about how maybe DXgov governance or DXgov contributors were like thinking about this. CowSwap themselves did not actually have the cow token added to the CowSwap token list on the day of the launch, but DXgov or Swapper did. And even though we had to like do an on-chain mainnet on-chain proposal to update that, so I think that's also indicative of maybe some of how the cow launch went on Swapper in general. Lots of good stuff there. But yeah, so that was on mainnet, but there's actually nothing else on mainnet now. But on Gnosis Chain, we have 4 buyback orders as usual. We have Augusto's contributor work proposal. This is a 2-month one, I think, from the fall. Then Grim contributor proposal. I actually want to vote on that one. I meant to do that one. And then we have Adam Azad contributor proposal that's pre-boosted. We have the somewhat mysterious December 2021 proposal title, which, don't be alarmed, this is Caden's proposal. You can see there, but a word to the wise, it's important to put the information besides just the month in your proposal title. And then actually Medusha looks like just submitted a proposal this morning for his. And then actually at the bottom we have Leonardo Bertiotti contributor proposal, which is actually in a quiet ending period because it took just under 2 days there. And then there is an exciting one, I think, another one to provision 100 WETH and 260K XI to Swapper. So maybe Dave, you can kind of just give us an update on where we're at in this Swapper liquidity provision.
Absolutely. So this is the final proposal to provision liquidity to the Swapper. Of course, Ether has moved up significantly since this original proposal passed. Off the top of my head, I believe it was 1.2 million DAI, and then the corresponding amount of Ether, of course, at that point for the price of Ether. Due to Ether moving up significantly, we'll have some XDAI left in the Swapper liquidity relayer, but we can just withdraw that to the treasury. So not really much of an issue, but just, of course, one thing that happens when we do these things over time is that, markets move, and, it's impossible beforehand to always send the correct amount. But
just looking at it now, and there's 260, I think there's 530,000 WETH in there.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like it's really diverged. I think that's for a couple of those orders, but yeah.
Quite a significant amount, yeah. But we'll be able to withdraw that to the treasury, so that's not an issue. And it's the last one, so we'll see as well what price this goes through. We might even have a bit more XI left over than it looks like now. But it's the last provisioning proposal, so we'll get some extra liquidity into Swapper, which is approaching 20 million TVL, I believe, on XDAI. So that's quite exciting. And that's it for that proposal. Not much more.
And then maybe I guess there's been a couple some activity the last couple of days in fund transfers. So what have we been moving around, or what's been going on the transfer front?
Absolutely. So going off the top of my head, but I believe we moved 435 Ether into WETH and bridged them over to Gnosis Chain from mainnet, and 385 of those went into the buyback relayer. So just on time, we were like 1 ether short for the upcoming proposal. So we managed to bridge that just in time. So the buyback keeps rolling up. And we have another 50 WEF, which was bridged directly into the Gnosis chain treasury. So, you know, a lot of contributors have some expenses sometimes in WEF, whether that's paying for invoices, fees, or deploying contracts. So it's always nice to have some WEF on Gnosis chain. And I think we have like around 62 WEF now in the Gnosis chain treasury. So that should last a significant amount of time. And then other than the WEF, we also bridged over 400K DAI. So we tapped this.
Is on.
Okay. We tapped into that from our stablecoin holdings on mainnet. So that's 400K DAI, which was moved to the Gnosis chain treasury. 200 of that was just in DAI, and then half of that was actually wrapped. So the reason we wrapped that is that we're able to do a lot more things with wrapped XDAI, like moving it into other stable coins and, well, anything really which involves generic multicores. We could even stake it into Curve, for example, with wrapped XDAI. And that's just because of the limitation in our voting machine about the native token transfer, which kind of limits what you can do with the native token on each network. And I believe that's pretty much all the transfers we've done. And we'll probably have a significant amount of XDAI for now in the Gnosis chain treasury, considering this recent movement of 400K XDAI. And on top of this, the surplus of XDAI we'll have from the price of Ether going up. So we'll have the XDAI coming from the swapper relayer back into the treasury. Yeah. But that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Awesome. And yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of stuff going on with Cal this week, and I think people have been kind of paying attention on other calls in other areas. But it was a very good time, or also for DXDAO as an LP on Swapper, and specifically on this on the WEF XDAI pair. I think they were getting something like, these numbers are not right exactly, but they were getting something like 200% of volume in a day. So 200, what is it? 200% the fees over liquidity. So right now it's at 41%. And I think during the Cal launch, it was at like 200%. And then the other really great one was actually this USDC XDAI pair. You can see even now it's got $90,000 in volume over the last 24 hours, which is a 17% like year APY on just stablecoins. And I think on Monday, it was like at 100%. There was almost $1 million in volume on this, which means I think the Treasury made like $2,000 alone on Monday just from this USDC XDAI pair. And then this is on top of like the protocol fee itself, which is going to go to the swapper, but just as DXDAO as an LP, this WEF XDAI has actually been pretty successful. Obviously, it's susceptible to impermanent loss, but I think with this type of volume, it has been able to beat that. Cool. I think that's it. Oh, and as Nathan says there, right? Yeah, we have 2 million more. So I think we officially have surpassed Sushi on Gnosis chain. I think both through a combination of DXDAO liquidity. I think more importantly was the addition of the Cal liquidity, which I think is about $2 million right now in the TVL in that pair. Yeah, I think that's it for proposals, unless there was any questions or comments. Nothing on Arbitrum 1 right now. Yeah, and then for the kind of discussion items, two things I thought we could kind of chat briefly about. We did talk about this briefly on the BizDev call on Monday, but for those of you who are not aware, I made a forum post after chatting with kind of some other people in DXDAO about the possibility of DXDAO participating in an agave auction to recapitalize it after the exploit. So this is still, a lot of moving parts to this, but just wanted to kind of maybe start the discussion on would DXDAO be interested in like committing capital to recapitalize Agave. I think for me, a couple of the key points are one, having Gnosis as a big backer, or as if they are buying a lot of Agave tokens, that is a way to align interests. I think two, it does show the strategic benefit or even the conversations around how Agave could fit into the DXDAO product suite. I think it does show the benefit of having a lending protocol in DXDAO's product suite. So just figuring out almost a way to fill that strategic need. And then, yeah, it's kind of an opportunity maybe to expand our presence on Gnosis chain. There's a, the Agave community has a good relationship with DXDAO already. And so maybe it's some things there. I don't think there's really any updates since their post in the forum, which hinted at a recapitalization plan and a auction that DXDAO could participate in, but I don't think there's any timeline or any specifics on that now. So mostly kind of discussion phase and maybe ready to ask. But I think this is, there's a lot of like longer questions about kind of like what this means and what we're kind of how the product suite develops, what's DXDAO's like kind of strategic needs. I don't know if there's any questions, or maybe John, you wanted to add anything from your perspective.
Yeah, I think what you said is a good goal, like coming out with an alignment with a lending protocol, more alignment with Gnosis. I think these are like high level things we should be aiming for. And I think I mentioned this maybe on Monday, but I think we still have maybe some due diligence to do or to like see from the Agave team for that specifically, in terms of like what their team looks like and also like what their roadmap is and what their game plan is. I think that's going to be important as well. Has there been any new developments? And I think there's the proposal, the post rather, in the Gnosis forum, right? I've like read the post from 100 and Agave, but I don't think there's been any follow up to that yet, right?
Yeah, I was just looking at that there. I think that they said something about doing another follow up, but I don't think there is. Yeah. Last post was 18 hours ago. And so.
Forum, the 101 as well as the Agave.
Yeah, and the 101, there's a little bit different kind of approach there. And, I think these are, DXDAO should be on the lookout for these opportunities as they arise, because I think DXDAO is well positioned in terms of its like treasury or product suite to maybe invest in projects as we go through maybe a sideways bear market, regardless of last week here. And I think there will be a lot of consolidation in general in DeFi over the next like year or two, and there will be some opportunities. So it's kind of to keep our eyes open for those, because what ends up happening is like those opportunities arise because of some like unforeseen event like this, right? Where Agave needs to sell a bunch of Agave tokens to recapitalize. So that's why the opportunity exists. But I think it's important for DXDAO and like the community to be on the lookout for how we can maybe make some strategic bets on this.
Maybe tomorrow's community call is a good place to discuss it again, because I was kind of thinking that some of the active DXD holders that are very opinionated about DXD buyback programs and how it affects DXD prices and if it's good for DXD and stuff like that. I was thinking maybe they haven't seen the post, maybe they don't have an opinion, but it would be interesting to hear what some of those very active DXD holders think about DXDAO, like, paying money from a treasury to have participation and part ownership in something like an Agave lending protocol. And there hasn't been much feedback on the forum post from that community, but we should try to get it. Maybe we can actively ask their opinions, or we can raise on the community call if they're going to be there. Maybe we can say we're going to talk about DXD buyback and then actually talk about Agave. on the community call and see
I
if we can
think
get.
Chris dropped it into Discord, right? And there was some
Yeah.
discussion, but maybe market chatter is the place.
Yeah, people skip the Discord and only market chat. So Connor did like immediately respond in Discord, and like I wish he actually would have posted this in the forum, because it is, I think, just looks like a good opportunity to me personally. I've seen a fair bit of talk recently about protocol investments being kind of idle because of reluctancy to ever sell then again, and therefore realize value of the investment, which I think has merit but shouldn't be a blocker. I'm actually not sure what that exactly means. But he has given feedback, and I guess when I think of like the DXD community that is loud on the buyback, it's like him and Pinkog, and then maybe Luigi. But obviously, he's kind of. But I think it would be great to have like more discussion in general, like on the forum from people. But I also think this is just like the early stages now that this will actually take some time to develop.
I think what might be, because I think what's been useful, at least from my perspective, and even just like talking about this, we've only started really talking about it on the calls like this week, but like last week, there were a few of us discussing this, kind of what it might mean, is kind of just thinking about like strategically what's important for DXDAO. So like, and I think there might be some value in almost like putting a spec, or like, I don't know if like a request for proposal is even maybe something that could happen, but basically saying like DXDAO has an interest in a lending protocol, and this is why, and this is our long-term goals around that, and kind of just like putting that out there, because I think that kind of creates like a reference point for evaluating these opportunities as they come up. And I think it also could potentially serve as like a call to action for other developers or teams that maybe would want to come in and say, hey, we want to like help you build something like this, or do this, or like achieve your goals, through partnership or whatever it may be.
Definitely.
Yeah. Also, you mentioned, John, the like due diligence on like what their team and the roadmap and their commitments and how it would work and things, but there's also, and it's very confusing, so I'm not sure I understand it fully, but like how, like, because it lost all its money and there's people that were lending and there's people that were borrowing, and even if they got an injection of capital from a round plus maybe money from Gnosis as well, like how that money and when that money goes to people in the system, and like, is it possible to make the system whole, or are they still haircutting people and have things moved? It seems very messy, and
It is a bit messy, and
it's almost like Gnosis acquired XDAI chain, and there was this problem in it, and it caused a big mess, and they didn't know that at the time. They probably would have corrected it sooner, and so now you're acquiring, like, you could be getting a decent percentage or part of a protocol of a very kind of messed up currently messed up system, that it might make sense to like just cancel the whole thing off and create a new, like, open it up from the ground up, like to start it back up or something. And there's a lot of uncertainty there, and so I don't know how much of that you need answered before you would want to acquire and invest.
I think it's important due diligence. Like I had mentioned earlier, kind of diligence on the team structure and their like future roadmap. But I think what you're saying also totally makes sense. We need to do some due diligence on basically the execution plan of restarting the protocol, and maybe even thinking a little bit about like, do we feel good about the technical risk overall of the protocol? And so like the hack itself it's interesting. I don't know if people have like looked at the kind of the postmortem and stuff. I think it was like the Gnosis forum or like the weekly Gnosis DAO thing had like kind of compiled some stuff that was a good reference. And this is a reentrancy attack, which is the same style of a hack that the original DAO hack was. And so it's basically when a contract is making an external call to another contract, it's possible for that external contract to kind of do whatever it wants. And so you have this concept of reentrancy, which is when that external contract you're calling calls back into your contract, and like does things that like manipulate the system. And so the way you protect against these like bad things happening is this, it's called the effects and interactions pattern. And basically it just means that you want to record any effects of what you're trying to do into the state of your smart contract before you go out and interact with external contracts. And that's like, so if you want, if you're doing something that's going to affect like the total like collateral balance in the lending protocol, I'm just kind of like making up an abstract example. And this is not like I don't know exactly what happened in the agave hack, but if you were trying to do something that changes like the collateral balance or whatever, you would first like increment that balance, like adjust it before you like call the external contract. So like the original DAO hack, it was literally like a matter of switching 2 lines of code to fix it or prevent it, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. It's just like all you had to do is switch the order of 2 lines of code. And so this reentrancy attack is what got agave, and I think something similar for 100. And I think if you look at where the culpability is or like the shared responsibility, there's I think 3 things you can kind of like see that made this possible, right? So first is like the Aave code itself apparently was not following this effects and interactions pattern. And so that was one thing that enabled this attack. The second thing is, the external contracts that Agave was interacting with. And so these are the listed tokens. And so you could say Agave did not do good due diligence on listing their tokens to make sure that there weren't these callback functions that enable the coming back to the original contract, that calling back to the contract. So you could say, okay, Agave shares some responsibility there for not doing the due diligence. But then the reason that Gnosis Chain is doing the hard fork is that these tokens, like, and it's the older ones, I guess, in the system, and I guess that's probably like WEF and Wrapped XDAI or whatever, those have these extra callbacks, which are not like in your simple ERC20 contract. So it's like these 3 things, right? It's like you have the Aave code not following like best practices. You have these extra callbacks, which maybe are a little bit unexpected and what, an auditor might call like a so-called foot gun, right? Like these tokens on Gnosis Chain have this extra functionality, which exposes you to an increased reentrancy risk. And then, Agave, if they had actually like checked for these things, maybe would have realized this ahead of time and not listed these tokens. But, to be honest, like I don't really like, I feel like if I were in this situation of Agave, I'm not sure like I would have known any better, right? Like you're forking a well-known, well-established protocol onto an EVM chain and listing well-known tokens. Like I don't think it's necessarily obvious that you would like expect something like this to be a problem. So definitely have a lot of sympathy for them. Like this is like something that, it's unfortunate, and these like, yeah, we call it foot guns, which is like something you could step on that blows up and harms you. So anyways, like that's like sort of like the technical picture here. And now like there's the question of restarting the protocol, and there's 3 things I can think of which need to be accounted for, and maybe there's more because I'm not really an expert in any lending protocol, let alone like Aave. So, but like there's the stolen funds, right? Like so the system's missing funds that needs to be adjusted for. There's the fact that the market has actually been moving since the hack. So what was like originally, I think Dave, you had the numbers on this, right? Like it was like originally like a $4.7 million hack or something. But because ETH is going up and other things, GNO is going up, like the hack is actually worth a lot more now. And then the third thing is, and if you have any money in Agave, you can actually see this in the UI. This is actually also happening at the smart contract level. Interest is accruing at some really whacked out rates because there's no collateral in the system. So there's like, the lending rates are like 100% or something crazy. And these like interests, like this is accumulating in the system. So you have people, technically the system thinks that people owe a lot more than they did when the hack happened. Probably a bunch of accounts are like underwater and would be susceptible to liquidation if you just were to turn it on. So yeah, I mean, all these things need to be like adjusted for. And I think what that probably means is they're going to redeploy and like reset some things. I think it's going to have to be sort of like a manual redeployment with a lot of like manual like sending of tokens would be my guess, but I don't know. In any case, we need to see a good solid plan from them on like how this is going to happen, and we should look at it ourselves and make sure there's like some smart technical people that also like approve the plan. So that was a bit long-winded, but that's my technical rundown on the thing.
Any
Thank you, Nathan. Thank you.
questions on the other comments?
This was great. I think it was very much needed. We don't have the knowledge to be aware of all what John mentioned. I just feel for him, as we might need him to repeat some of this on tomorrow's call.
Yeah, I can try to maybe simplify. I don't know if that made sense to folks, or did it make sense to people? Do you have questions? I can try. Like I was trying to. I think it's important to kind of understand, like some of this stuff in a high level way.
Yeah, especially that concept of like the interest still accruing. It's like because it's just like smart contracts, right? And I think there is a lot. I see a potential big strategic opportunity for DXDAO, but that is like not yet clear right now, and lots of things need to unfold before it's clear like what that opportunity is. And some of it's just this is that due diligence. Some of that is like they need to like clearly explain these things. But I'm hoping, or I'm optimistic that those things, I guess, will move forward in direction. But I think a key part in all of this is Gnosis. And if they are feeling comfortable with like the technical plan to re-implement, then like, that says a lot there. So I think DXDAO may not be like driving this deal, but I think others may be doing it. But I think it's like still an opportunity for us to participate. Now there's another world where we can kind of like be a much more like proactive, about this, and saying like we need a lending protocol. Like that's our goal, and like how do we get there? And like almost like the idea of putting out a spec there. But I think it's good that we're just kind of seeing how like a strategic opportunity, and like how we could best seize it, and doing due diligence and kind of discussing it in the community. I think these are all good steps.
And it probably maybe goes without saying, but like a robust lending protocol is important for Gnosis chain, right? Which is, I think, part of the reason why Gnosis is so, part of it's their maybe shared responsibility for the hack itself, but in creating goodwill for the chain. But it's also just, this is a necessary piece of infrastructure for like a robust DeFi ecosystem, right? So like right now, at the moment, there's nowhere to go on Gnosis chain to deposit tokens and take a loan against them, right? Like it just, like with 100 agave down, there's literally nothing at the moment, and that you can't grow a chain to be competitive with the top 20 when that's the situation. So this, like, it's important that this like is addressed, right, and that we have a robust lending platform on Gnosis chain.
There was a proposal or a discussion around like asking or Aave coming to Gnosis chain, right? So if this exists, it wouldn't Aave see something like, or Compound see an opportunity here, and then just bring like the varsity lending platform to what could become a really big chain like they did with Polygon?
I think there's a possibility. I was actually just going to share this before that question, but Stani was on Bankless yesterday, I think a big podcast, and kind of talking about this. And Ryan was, I think kind of framing your question is like, will DeFi Blue Bloods be successful everywhere? Or will there be like chain native projects that kind of prop up? I mean, think of PancakeSwap, Trader Joe,
Swapper.
And so I think it's like a little push and pull for both. But I think for DXDAO and Gnosis, like the key is we both have a treasury that could be used in a protocol like this, in a lending protocol. I mean, we literally have like $10 million of stables. And I think it only makes sense for us and Gnosis both to do that in a protocol that it has a big stake in. And so I think that's what could be driving it, in addition to like Gnosis chain itself needs that. Needs like those kind of capabilities. And I guess the last thing I'd say on this like podcast I thought was really interesting is, so it's all about Aave v3, which really is like a cross-chain lending protocol. And so when we're thinking about DXgov needs a lending protocol, like we don't want something with like 2019 tech in a way. I mean, it's okay to get that now, but like if we're going to be competing in a lending protocol, DeFi lending protocol, this is like kind of our bet. We need to be thinking about the next several years of building kind of lending infrastructure and how that's going to be done, because I assume there will be a lot of innovation in the lending space, specifically as it comes to like cross-chain stuff that will need to be implemented in whatever lending protocol play that DXgov engages in. And so I think that's kind of getting into like the due diligence of like, is this the team that could execute that next stage of development that we all know is coming for lending protocols?
Yeah, it's an interesting question on like whether Aave is coming. I think it was the like Carpet Key folks that made a post in their forum about coming. I don't know if there was any follow-up on that post and whether Aave was going to come. I do know too that Agave is actually in touch with Aave, the team, about this exploit itself too. So there is some communication there. I don't know, what Aave's, obviously Aave is already on like I think a crazy number of other chains. So it's an interesting question whether they would actually come to Gnosis or not.
Cool. All right. Well, it's a good kind of discussion. As I said, let's put we can get some maybe more discussion on the forum with these points. I think there's some good points. But yeah, I think we'll be waiting to see how things unfold and see if there's an opportunity for DXgov.
Do you all know what the governance process is for deploying to new chains for these protocols like Aave, Sushi, or whatever? Is that something that they vote on, or is it just the core team doesn't?
I mean,
Sushi's just definitely the core team does it.
I feel like they do vote on it, because I remember there was a vote to deploy it on Arbitrum, I think.
I think Uniswap actually does have a proper like vote. Like that's like the only thing it votes on if it gets a certain amount. But I don't know if the other ones have robust enough. Yeah, and like Agave's governance, I don't think is really anything.
It's a snapshot vote, right? So this is like a deploy Aave v3 and Arbitrum 1, and then people vote on it.
And like, just as things that went down recently, like on lending protocols, we haven't really talked about like the politics or the potential strategic advantage of the ability to list collateral. I don't know if you saw that A16Z voted down Matic or Polygon's token collateral application on the compound governance. They said it was because of since Compound experienced a security breach recently, they don't want to add any new assets until they have like the new audit through. But I think they were like the only big vote to vote against Matic. So obviously it would be nice if DXgov could vote for tokens that it would like to see listed on a lending protocol.
So I'm guessing A16Z did not invest in Matic.
Right. I mean, that's the whole point. Like, Matic is like a massive competitor to all of A16Z's investments. Like, I think they have, I don't know, they're in every other. And so I do think that you'll see that more in governance and specifically on lending protocols and this like collateral component.
Quick question for us, for the guilds. DXDAO as a DAO holding tokens, could it participate in the guild?
Yes, it could. It would just depend on timings, obviously, but we can set up schemes to move faster or move at the correct timings for matching with the guilds. But yeah, that's possible.
Wow.
And actually, it's probably not necessary, but it's definitely a good thing even if we're not voting, to lock the tokens in the token vault anyways for guilds, so that we inflate the supply a good amount. so that we don't have like a very low amount of governance tokens, so that anyone could come in and then start taking over governance.
Speaking of friendly forks, I don't know, for those in the Gnosis ecosystem DAO Discord, which we helped set up, Gnosis Chain Innovation DAO, there was some talk this week about another post by, I think it was the same folks that were posting in Aave, posting, I think it was maybe in the Gnosis forum, about like soliciting a balancer friendly fork on Gnosis Chain. And there's Symmetric, which is a balancer fork that's sort of, I think this is acknowledged in the post actually, but basically they're talking about this in the Gnosis Innovation DAO because, you know, it's sort of like, I think the Symmetric folks feel a little bit threatened by this, you know, like, you know, is Gnosis pushing for Balancer to come in and like compete with them, or like, are they getting support from Gnosis on this? So that's sort of an interesting question, I think, in general, sort of relates to DXDAO a little bit, but something maybe just to keep an eye on in general, like just sort of the politics of the chain.
Awesome. And just moving on to the next discussion item, a swap fee update. And so for those of you don't know, we had this, Venki's been leading this effort, kind of looking at the swap fees on, adjusting the swap fees on Swapper. And he'd done a poll, and I believe we'd executed the first one for Swapper XDAI about like a week ago. And yeah, so maybe Venki can kind of give us an update on like how that went, and yeah, should we be raising more fees?
Yeah, so out of the four proposals, of the four proposals, I created an on-chain proposal to update swap fee for Swapper XDAI, and yeah, so I think it has worked pretty well. It's 1% fees right now, and I don't see any drop in volume.
I mean, somehow, I don't think it's because of the fees, but literally volume increased.
Yeah,
like around that time.
So I'm guessing that we would take the next step and then look at the next pairs and update swap fee for DXD with in Gnosis chain, and then Swapper with in Arbitrum.
Yeah, and I think one of the other things to look at is like, has more liquidity been added? And so I think there's been a little bit more added. You see, within the last 2 weeks, it's this is a smaller amount, but there was some like kind of significant amount. Here's a 17,000 add, and I think there was a big remove, one yesterday or two, but maybe some more activity there, and we can kind of be a more attractive place. The other thing with the swapper prices, there was, since that big discrepancy with Arbitrum, that may have affected some of the activity there.
Yeah. So since the day that we created this proposal, we have almost double the liquidity. So it was around 45,000 here, March 16th. And we have about double the liquidity. It also resonates with the price increase.
Right.
Yeah, it's decent.
And I think we noticed this, like when you have a monopoly on the pool or on the pair, like fees don't matter as much. And so like, there's not going to be another swapper pool. So as long as there is, and like, I think people will want to buy swapper, but I mean, there was a lot of impermanent loss last week, right? Because it just jumped very quickly. So there is some risk to doing that. I also think like higher fees are in general probably like a strategy that Swapper could use for some of the pairs that it goes after. In the cow, I was just thinking in the cow swap launch, obviously like it's fine that there was a lot of fees from all of the volume and trading activity, but like I'm sure there would have been just as much volume if the swap fee was 0.75%, right? And they were just as much volume, just as much trading. People are going to want to dump or buy cow just as much, but it just would have a lot more fees that are going to LPs. So I would really say like maybe that's a strategy of Swapper for like new tokens. Like they start with a high LP fee that maybe comes down. Now, of course, you need to be able to have like the monopoly, and so you have to probably have rewards on it, or you have to have some way of knowing that that token liquidity is going to come to that pool. But yeah, and so just in addition to the Swapper one, I think it would make sense to explore DXD WETH, both on XDAI and I think also should be considered on mainnet.
Yeah. Cool. I'll start.
Oh, that's nice. How did you get those fees?
Yeah, it's a new build.
That's really nice. I think that would be really cool because I think it would be interesting to see the different fees.
Yeah. Hopefully this sees an on-chain proposal soon. But yeah, you can actually see that the WETH house has 0.5% and yeah, the Swapper XDAI has 1%. And I tried adding a few more details as well in. I can give a little bit. Open Swapper XDAI. Now I forgot about it. This happened a couple of months back. So we are trying to see how much of the liquidity is being utilized on a 7-day moving average. So if it is 0.1%, I think it's a decent utilization. So basically it's volume divided by liquidity. And yeah, if it is 4%, then it's pretty good. I'll show what it is for CowWETH there. It should, oh, it's a bug probably. I shouldn't have. Yeah, but soon it would, yeah, once these bugs are fixed, I think it would see the light.
Very cool. Awesome. Anything else on the mind? Any comments, questions, suggestions?
I just noticed in the governance chat, the latest scoop is that the initial version of the guild will have token holders vote on LP fees instead of LPs themselves. That will be later, right?
Yes, that is the alpha. If you dig around
Yes.
the governance chats.
Where'd you get that alpha?
You've been sniffing around the development channel.
Yeah. Well, because we're talking about the fee. We're talking about changing the fees right now, obviously, right?
Yeah.
I think it's a very cool feature of Swapper. Yeah. And
Yeah,
maybe
that's the
underutilized.
current thinking. I don't know if maybe, I guess Seth isn't here, but thank you. Yeah, that's what we've been discussing today, basically, is launching with that first and then considering later on if we want to, and then moving it over to the LP tokens actually doing the governance of that.
What was the term for it? Like dog fooding? Like we're dog fooding our own product to ourselves and like building it, testing it in prod.
Yeah. That's
Clarify,
like
it will be well tested before production. In case John's still listening.
I thought you were gonna say something besides dog food. That's like more European.
Oh, I'm listening, Russ.
Yeah. Yeah, Andre has retired. Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for joining this edition of the DXgov governance discussion. Have a good day.
Have a good day.
Cheers.
I guess.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.